Starting college, I was all about new experiences, learning and making friends. What I didn't sign up was for my own personal horror story, straight out of a stalker-like movie. It all began innocently enough, in one of my classes with a guy who at first seemed just a bit too friendly. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs earlier. This guy, let's call him Dave, had this weird interest in me from the get-go. It wasn't your usual, hey, let's be friends kind of vibe. No, Dave was on another level. He'd always make sure to sit uncomfortably close to me in class, invading my personal space in a way that set off alarm bells in my head. But that was just the start. Dave had this odd obsession with swapping sweatshirts. Yeah, you heard that right. He wanted me to wear his sweatshirt as if we were some kind of high school couple straight out of a cheesy romance movie. He'd say things like, "You should wear mine so it's like I'm holding you." It's creepy, isn't it? But it gets worse. Whenever I had to leave my seat, maybe for a quick trip to the restroom, I had to have my friends guard my stuff. He had this habit of grabbing something from my desk if no one was watching. Kind of felt like he was marking his territory, leaving me feeling violated in a place where I was supposed to learn and grow. The end of class was a nightmare. He'd wait for me, and as I was packing up, he'd grab my backpack, pulling me back, insisting I say goodbye to him. Sometimes he'd even demand a hug, but there was no way I was letting that happen. I'd pull away, giving him a firm, "Heck no, leave me alone, goodbye." But he seemed unfazed, almost amused by my discomfort. One day, he took his obsession to a whole new level. He followed me from our classroom building all the way to the library. My heart was pounding, fear coursing through me with every step. I knew I had to do something, so I picked up my phone and called my dad, narrating every detail of what was happening. Dave, realizing I was onto him, pretended to head off in another direction, but just when I thought I had shaken him off, he reappeared behind me, like some kind of persistent shadow I just couldn't escape. I didn't live on campus, just a 2-minute walk away, but that walk became the most terrifying part of my day. The thought of him following me home, discovering where I had lived, was enough to send chills down my spine. I was always looking over my shoulder now, jumping at shadows, fearing he'd emerge from the darkness. I wasn't gonna let this go on. I made sure everyone knew. My friends, the faculty, and the staff. I told them everything about Dave's behavior, making them aware of my situation in case something happened to me. It felt like I was living in a constant state of alert, prey watched by an unseen predator. But here's the thing, despite the fear, the anxiety, and the constant looking over my shoulder, I refused to let Dave take away my sense of security and my peace of mind. So I stood my ground, surrounded myself with people who supported me, ready to protect me from whatever Dave might have planned. This experience taught me way more than any class ever could. It taught me about resilience, the importance of speaking out, and the strength that comes from community. College is supposed to be about finding yourself, not losing yourself to fear. I learned to navigate through my own horror story, coming out stronger on the other side. And as for Dave, well, let's just say he learned that I wasn't someone to be messed with, and that no amount of intimidation could break me. I was more than just a target of his obsession. I was a survivor, a fighter, and above all, a person who refused to be defined by her stalker. During welcome week of my freshman year, I was buying school books from one of those outside mobile bookstores. Not important to the story really, but I guess it's notable that my college's student union was under renovation at the time, and there were a lot of portable buildings to walk between. Anyway, I had just finished buying my books and I was walking to the bus stop to go back to my dorm. I was struggling with one of the bags because the crappy plastic had broke around one of the handles, when a guy came out of nowhere and started talking to me about it. He was bigger than me and kept trying to make conversation, but he didn't seem to get the vibe that I want to be left alone. I was super uncomfortable around strangers in this town at the time, because I had just come from a rural part of Oklahoma and wasn't used to large crowds. After kind of nodding and going along with whatever he said for a moment while I waited for my bus, I was really kind of over it. I remember at some point he was telling me that he felt really comfortable talking to me because I reminded him of some of the girls he talked to in his hometown. It seemed that he was a freshman from a rural town too. Needless to say, I was relieved when my bus came and he watched me board it from the sidewalk. I chalked it up to a first week thing. My campus was huge, and so I'd never see him again, right? Well, fast forward a week when I've gone to a few classes. I'm kind of familiar with where buildings are now. I was getting myself some lunch at one of the makeshift portable cafeterias when I thought I heard someone trying to get my attention. It's packed, but I somehow get my food in a decent amount of time. As I'm checking out, I saw a guy waving at me, although I fully didn't recognize him until I was staring for a while. Remembering the guy from last week, I suspected it was him trying to get my attention. I located my nearest exit, again, because it was weird how enthusiastically he was waving at me. There were a ton of people there for lunch, plus I just wanted to find my classroom and still eat my lunch. So I gave him a short wave, just so I wasn't flat out ignoring him, and I began walking to the door. Once outside, I start to leg it to my next classroom building, rationalizing that maybe the guy wasn't the same dude and it was someone else who had mistaken me for someone else. At this time, I had already met a few people that told me I looked like someone else they knew, so maybe it was one of those times, but it was not. Lo and behold, the dude who had just left the cafeteria portable was following my path behind me towards the classroom, which I'll admit was a common one, but something told me he was actually trying to catch up. I resumed life as normal, telling myself whatever, maybe it's just class here too and I'm just being paranoid. I continued to my classroom and sat outside the door, figuring maybe he hadn't seen what floor I'd gone to and I could eat in peace. I'm just about to dig into my sandwich when this dude rounds the corner and starts making his way to me. Before he even got a chance to speak, I gathered my stuff and started getting up. He started talking to me, saying he just wanted to talk and wanted to make friends, which I'll admit made me feel bad. I told him I'm sorry, but I'm just here to eat lunch and go to class. I also remember feeling the need to say I had a boyfriend, which I did at the time, although he lived an hour away. Although in retrospect, I don't know if he even had an interest like that for me. Either way, this dude gave me weird vibes and I felt like a jerk for a long time. I guess I still do when I consider that the dude may have just been lonely or awkward and wanted to just confide in me because I looked like the type of person he was comfortable with. But still, this dude following me from one building to another to watch me eat lunch just didn't sit well with me. Anyway, I never saw him again after that. So, here's a freaky story from one of my college days at USC. I'm the kind of person who sticks to a routine, especially during the school year. My evenings were pretty standard. Wrap up classwork, do some video editing for extra cash, and then with the late night shower. It was my way of unwinding, but man, there was this one night that completely threw me off my game. It was just like any other night at first. I was finishing up some editing gigs, probably for some YouTubers or Instagram kids, when I decided to hit the shower. That's when things got weird. Just as I was getting into it, I heard the front door of my dorm creak open. Now, this wasn't just a soft creak, it was the kind that made it clear someone was entering. I instantly turned off the shower, heart racing, straining my ears for any sound. Nothing. Dead silence. Grabbing my phone off the sink, I decided to call one of my buddies first. He sounded half asleep when he picked up, but the moment I told him about the door, you could practically hear him wake up. He muttered something about getting dressed and stayed on a line with me. Then, out of nowhere, this loud crash echoed through my dorm. It sounded like metal hitting the floor, which was weird because I didn't own much metal stuff. My friend, now fully awake and on his way, asked what that noise was. Honestly, I was hoping he'd tell me. Soon, I heard him jogging down the hallway, coming to my rescue. He texted me when he got to the door, saying it was wide open and he could hear someone breathing heavily. Creeped out, I told him to burst in so I could rush out to join him. We planned it quickly. I was right by the door, ready to run out the moment I heard it open. And when I did, I threw the door open and nothing. The room was as I left it, eerily quiet, with my friend looking just as freaked out as I felt. We searched my room, but found no one. Deciding not to chance it, I grabbed my stuff and crashed in his room for the night. The next morning, we went back to my dorm to find it a mess. My blankets and pillows were all over the floor, but the real shocker was the scratches on the wall. They definitely weren't there before. We ended up getting campus security involved, but they thought we were pulling some kind of stunt. They even mentioned we might have to pay for the damages. It took some convincing, but we finally got them to take us seriously. They even called in some local ghost hunters, though that turned out to be a bust. Those guys found nothing, leaving us with a ton of questions and no answers. The morning after the whole spooky episode, my buddy and I were trying to make a sense of it all. The dorm room seemed like a mini tornado had hit it, but those scratches in the wall, that was some next level creepy stuff, man. Looked like something out of a horror movie, not what you expect in a college dorm, especially USC. After the ghost hunters found jack shit, my friend and I were left scratching our heads. The rest of the semester, I was the guy with the haunted room. People would joke about it, but I could tell some were genuinely curious, maybe even a bit spooked. I mean, who wouldn't be? USC's got its fair share of ghost stories, believe it or not, but it's different when you're living in one. Nights were the worst after that. Every creak and groan from the building had me on edge. I tried to brush it off, keep my routine going, but showering at night? Yeah, that was off the table. I started doing that in the mornings, bright and early, when the sun was up, and the world felt a bit safer. And the door, I got one of those heavy-duty locks. It probably looked ridiculous to anyone who didn't know this full story, but I didn't care. Sleeping was a whole other issue. I'd lay there, staring at the ceiling, half expecting to hear that metallic crash again, or see those scratches on the wall start to multiply. Spoiler alert, they didn't. But that didn't stop my imagination from running wild. As for my buddy, the guy who came to my rescue, we became closer after that. Having someone believe you when you're dealing with something straight out of the left field, it means a lot. We'd sit around trying to debunk my experience, throwing around theories from the plausible to the outright bizarre. Was it a prank gone way too far? A genuine paranormal event? Or maybe just the universe's way of telling me to switch dorms? Looking back, I think what stuck with me the most wasn't the fear or the uncertainty. It was the way the experience changed my perspective. I've always been a skeptic, the kind of person who needs to see to believe. But after what happened in room 327, I'm a little more open to the mysteries of the world, the unexplained corners of our existence. I eventually moved out of that room, and nothing similar ever happened again. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't occasionally wonder about the next person who lived there. Did they experience anything weird, or was my encounter a one-off, a glitch in the matrix designed just for me? So yeah, there you have it, my brush with the unexplainable at USC. It's a story I've shared at parties, around campfires, and yes, even on the internet. The reactions are always a kind of mix of disbelief, curiosity, and, for the few who've had similar experiences, a kind of shared understanding. What happened that night and the days that followed, it's become a part of my college lore. A story that's as much as a part of my education as any class I took. It taught me to question, to wonder, and to sometimes just accept that some things are beyond our understanding. To this day, my friend and I still talk about what happened in dorm room 327. Was it a ghost? Someone messing with us, or something else? We never figured it out, but it's one of those stories that just stick with you, you know?